Let me be perfectly clear. I still think that Caleb Williams is like, I mean, of course he's going to go in the top 3, and of course that's appropriate. I don't think anybody thinks he's like a second round player or anything like that. The reason that I don't see him as the generational prospect that he is described as, a lot of people say, oh, he's the best guy to come out in 15 years. I don't think he's the best guy to come out in the last 2 years. I don't even have him as the best guy this year.
Gather around, Skol brothers and sisters. This is Skol World, brought to you by Minnesota Sports Talk. I'm your host, Dave. You can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, or Facebook at Skol World. Got a major treat for you today. A friend of the channel officially, because this guy's been on at least, this is like his 4th time, bringing him back, popular demand. The kid, I cheated on in math class and probably English and whatever, and I copy everything he does on YouTube. Luke Braun. How you doing, man?
Hey, how we doing?
So excited. Hey, everybody congratulate this dude in the comments. He's getting married. Yay, finally. Someone finally grabbed this guy. Finally grabbed this guy.
Relax.
You've been doing a lot of video watching lately, and just a heads up to everybody listening, I'm gonna ask him about some cap space issues of like re-signing Kirk, but we're gonna dive into Jaden Daniels and some of the other top quarterbacks that he's just recently did some film on. But let's start off just to get a little warm of like, what does the contract look, void years, things like that, with maybe hindering the signing of Kirk, or what would a Kirk signing look like? And then we'll talk about Danielle Hunter and then move on.
Sure. Void years make some people, their brains just totally turn off with void years. But basically a nice shorthand way to think about it, if you don't want to do all the math, is that money is deferred into the void years. And the more void years you have, the thinner it spreads, and therefore the more gets, flung out into the future. And then whenever he leaves, all the money that's left owed in quote unquote void years gets paid off right away, and all the years get deleted, and then it's just a dead cap hit. So for Cousins, I believe he has a whole bunch of signing bonus stuff and restructures and things that happened over the course of his contract history, things Rick Spielman did, things Kwesi did, that have spread his money out in a weird way over these void years. In 2024, I think it's 10.5, correct me if I'm wrong, 10.5 million of it is owed in 2024, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And then for the next 3 years, there's 18.5 million that is spread out over those 3 years in a weird way. So if he leaves right now and he walks and Vikings don't re-sign him, you pay all 28 million of that all at once. It is all due right now. If you extend him, only the 10 million is due when it's due, and everything else is due when it was scheduled to be due. So he would have it's 28.5 would be his dead cap hit if he left. I think I got some of the rounding wrong there, but 28.5 would be his dead cap hit if he left. If he signed to, say, just to make the math easy, a $20 million deal, probably would be a low number, but I'm trying to keep the numbers easy.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if he signed to a $20 million 1-year deal, he would cost that original 10 million that's due no matter what, plus 20. So his cap hit would go from 28.5 million to 30 million, and you would get the benefit of having Kirk Cousins on your team. So it's sort of this discounted thing. And if you want a more realistic number, let's say 30 million, 35 million, you still get 18 kind of gets to be deferred, right? You just get to pay that later, worry about it later, which
what happens in a 2-year contract? Cause there's talk about that too. Like, would that second void year automatically be due?
It would be the same thing then.
Same thing.
Because I think that 2025 is identical to 2024. So you'd have 10 of it now, 10 of it in 2025, and then the remaining 8 would be 2026, whatever's left over. So yeah, you could deal with that. Now, my understanding of where the Kirk contract stuff is at, we had Albert Breer report on Monday that the Vikings will not fully guarantee Kirk Cousins' contract. And that they've made that clear, that's already kind of been established in contract negotiations. So you're not going to see a fully guaranteed 3-year deal like what Rick Spielman did.
Now, I
So
got a
it's gonna,
question about that.
yeah, sure.
Because we just talked about that. I'm recording this right after we went live, and we talked about that Albert Breer report and where they made it clear. Where do you know that they made it clear? Just do you
I'm
feel?
taking the report on faith.
Yeah.
Because it's the Monday morning quarterback. That's a very prestigious thing.
Okay.
I don't think you put it in there. Like that's something where Albert Breer is staking his reputation on that,
Okay.
And I think I trust a journalist a little more when they're willing to put their name on it and they're not doing the wishy-washy. Well, maybe they could
I
not
heard
fully
this
guarantee
guy.
that.
I heard so and so talking out
Or
loud, and yeah,
it's the
so there's a
Florio
little more weight
move.
to this one.
Yeah, the Florio move of, well, they could trade Justin Jefferson. But if it doesn't happen, you're not on the. You say, oh, I was just speculating. He's not speculating here. He said it has been made clear. My source tells me, like, that is very concrete. So I'm taking that on faith. But that also tracks with what we heard from the Star Tribune guys on Access Vikings, Kramer and Gessling, before the season. Kirk Cousins offered the Vikings, or he submitted a contract and said, hey, I would sign this. That would have been fully guaranteed through 2025. And they said, we don't want to fully guarantee through 2025.
Was that from the last March, or was that a new thing?
Just during camp this year.
Yeah. So it was.
Yeah.
It was.
But that was
June. He said that in June. Yeah, he said
or
that
June or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in June, but like there was talk about it. That's what it was. The talks were about in March, and then it did. Yeah. So
is that okay? I see what you mean.
Yeah,
and
the
then
timeline there. I thought maybe that was a new thing, like recently, but that was
I think we're talking about the same thing. Maybe I just
this is from 2023. Yeah. I get it now. Just making
sure. Yeah. In that off season, right? So that kind of makes sense that they're still not willing to guarantee 2025, but now there's only 1 year until 2025. So Kirk Cousins, I think the ball's in his court a little bit.
Yeah.
He either has to take a 1-year deal, which I don't think he's a big fan of, or he has to take an unguaranteed deal, which he's also not a big fan of. And so will he test the open market and say, maybe someone else gives me a 2-year fully guaranteed deal, or maybe even a 3-year fully guaranteed deal? Or do I just say, look, I'm older, I hurt my Achilles, I got to take my lumps on this one and take the deal? I think that's what this all comes down to. Brad Spielberger, I like his contract projections a lot. He says 2 years, $35 million a year. But if it's not fully guaranteed, then the actual cap burden that comes out to sort of depends on what happens after that first year. It'll be like lowered for year one, right? Because you'll probably have signing bonus and stuff in there, and it'll be kept manageable. You can put as much of that as you want into signing bonus. You can make his cap hit 40 million right now, and then 2025 isn't so bad. Or you could make it 20 million right now and then have a problem in 2025 you have to figure out how to solve. You could even it. You can do whatever you want. But that's roughly where I think the situation is. And it's a matter of if Kirk Cousins is like deciding he's okay with it.
Well, and that's one of the things, like after the 12th or something like that, if we didn't extend him, then all 28 million hits, right? And then the only way to really extend him would be like pay him like $10 million and wait, and add more debt, void years, right? That would probably be the only way we would be able to re-sign him. You know what I'm saying? Because wouldn't we take all 28?
Are there regardless.
It's there regardless, but I mean, we would get the 28 hit on the 12th, right? If he doesn't, if he's not extended.
Yes, which is worked into most of the cap space projections that you see
now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. When you go to like overthecap.com and they say the Vikings are projected to have this much cap space, that is assuming that it's 28.5.
We're getting the dead cap hit.
Yes, and if it spreads out more, that number will go up. But most of the projections you see will already have that factored in.
Well, my thought process is he's gone if we get to that point where we're going to take $20 million.
Right. You wouldn't take that and then sign him to a new contract. You could.
You wouldn't make a
There's nothing stopping you. But this is what I will say about all these void year guys. If you didn't do it when it was efficient to do it, when it was, when you could defer money and there was all these helpful little tools that can make it easier to get it done. If you didn't do it then, why would you go back and do it now?
Yeah.
If you're going to do it when it's efficient, there's no reason to wait and make all that money like slam you all at the same time. It's like, why would you pay off a loan all at once when there's no interest? In fact, maybe negative interest on it because it doesn't grow with inflation. Ask any finance guy, if you had a negative interest loan, would you want to pay all that off at once? They'd look at you like your head's on backwards.
Why this would be a great transition to go talk about the draft, the quarterbacks. I did still want to talk about Danielle Hunter. where he is, I think, a $15 million dead cap hit. He's this is a good question. So you got Danielle, you got Kirk Cousins, and now they've actually worked it out to where Davenport has got the same void date. Is that a premonition that they're actually trying to work something out with Davenport?
They're leaving the option open, sure. They would have just let him go if they had already kind of internally decided.
Thing?
Well, if they had already internally decided that they don't want Marcus Davenport anymore and they're going to let him walk, they would have just, why bother, right? But right now, the at least the way the reporting around this has been is that Kirk Cousins is getting done first. Whether it's a yes or a no with Kirk Cousins, that is going to resolve first, and then we go talk to the edge rushers. So they're buying themselves time to get Kirk Cousins done, and then I don't even know. They might not have even asked themselves if they like Marcus Davenport yet,
right?
Or if they want him back yet.
It would be a plan B if Danielle walks, right? He would be a decent.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. But if you let both of them walk, you have a deep emergency. you need to get some dudes in that room, because otherwise you got like Andre Carter in a dream, and that's not going to get you there.
If you got Wanham gone, you got both Danielle Hunter and Davenport gone. You just lost 3 edge rushers and you're screwed. So yeah, they got to do something. It was a decent idea, and I don't know. There's not a lot of favorable thoughts by Viking fans based on the fact that he only played like 2.5 games, but he was good while he was in there. And I think maybe that would be a nice little insurance policy that we still could work something out with him if Hunter's asking for just the world, right? Because he deserves it. He played really well.
Here's a way to think about it, right? So you need starting edge rushers, right? You can't just walk in with like no starters at edge rusher, right?
No quarterback and no edge rushers going into
right. You're going to walk into a season. Somebody's playing that role, and you got to spend resources on it, whether it's a draft pick or cap, right? So my thing with Marcus Davenport, I'm into like a prove it deal with him. Don't pay him $13 million again. That was a mistake. But what if he's willing to come back for $3 million or $5 million is the Brad Spielberger projection? A $5 million deal actually wouldn't materially change his cap hit. I think it would go up like $100,000 or something, like a tiny little notch. That because of the same void year stuff that Kirk Cousins has, stuff would spread out, and you'd eventually have to pay $5 million more in dead cap later. Like over the whole, you'd have to pay $5 million more because you're paying him more money. But because of the way that it like spreads out, it gives you another chance. And a deferred $5 million payment is probably less than you're going to get any significant free agent for. And it's certainly less valuable than like a first round draft pick. So if you want to be cheap at edge rusher, and if you want to save that money for something else, for paying Justin Jefferson and all this other stuff everybody's worried about, Marcus Davenport actually is a fairly efficient idea. He carries some risk, but maybe we can do a better job mitigating that this time. And the same thing exists with Danielle Hunter in terms of his contract. He's got less void years, so it doesn't spread out quite as thin. But he does have 2. So if you gave him, say, a $10 million signing bonus, 5 of it would be paid now, 5 of it would be paid next year. That helps. It helps to be able to just like wait till the cap is bigger to pay stuff off. That's like very much an efficiency that is worth exploiting and abusing. And I think the smartest teams in the league do abuse it. And then, you also get the benefit of having Danielle Hunter on your team, which is pretty valuable.
Before I move on to my favorite college quarterback, I kind of sparked a little thought in my head here as far as oh gosh, what was I going to say? We'll just move on, man. Let's move on. It'll probably pop back in my head here. But you've looked at some tape, and you looked at the top 6 guys for sure. Now it looks like, and can you kind of how about this? I know you're not the biggest fan of Caleb Williams. I'm sure you like him, but tell me what you feel like are the things holding you back from loving Caleb Williams.
Yeah, so I let me be perfectly clear. I still think that Caleb Williams is of course he's going to go in the top 3, and of course that's appropriate. I don't think anybody thinks he's like a second round player or anything like that. The reason that I don't see him as the generational prospect that he is described as, a lot of people say, oh, he's the best guy to come out in 15 years. I don't think he's the best guy to come out in the last 2 years. I don't even have him as the best guy this year, but I understand the appeal of all of the, the deep explosive plays, all the run around, the scrambling, the improv, the ability to get rid of pressure, the athleticism to evade pressure, and being really good at throwing on the run. There's a package there, and I definitely get it. For me, the scrambling has some details to it that I think look better than they are because Pac-12 defenses can't punish it. In particular, he loves to go backwards and lose himself depth. When you're scrambling, when you escape the pocket and you scramble, you want to stay flat. You want to keep your depth. You don't want to go further. You don't want to cut down until you're ready to throw because then you risk, going ahead of the line of scrimmage. And you definitely don't want to go backwards. We saw Josh Dobbs do that a whole bunch of times to a whole bunch of disaster plays, right?
We
understand. Yeah, you don't want to go backwards.
First thought in my head. Yep.
He's really inconsistent about that. When he is throwing on the run, and I think a lot of the way that he reads is he's reading receivers and not defenders. So some of the worst interceptions that you'll see, and there's like a pretty good contingent of like really concerning plays on Caleb Williams's tape, and everyone gets so distracted by the explodey cool highlights that I think you kind of forget that you're looking for, the down to down consistency. But when you're reading a receiver and you're saying, okay, there's his receiver and he's ahead of the guy that's covering him, and you go, okay, that guy's open, and he'll throw it, not realizing that there's another lurking defender because he's not looking at the defenders. He's tunnel visioning on one receiver, and then a guy that he doesn't see will come in and make a play on the ball. That explains like a lot of his interceptions, and it's an issue that is really difficult to coach out. That's like a cognition thing. That's like the way that he sees and processes the information downfield. To change that takes a long time. So I see him as somebody that look, you could throw him out there and let him learn how to, rely on all of his scrambling stuff as a crutch while you still don't have an O-line. Like if I'm Chicago, I'm really worried about that. I just did that to Justin Fields.
I draft him so bad, honestly. I don't want Marvin Harrison Jr. there.
You just had Justin Fields lean into his worst scrambling habits because you put him behind a really bad O-line, and it was the only way to survive. I still remember that game against Cleveland in 2021 where everything was such a disaster that Justin Fields just ran around, and it was the only offense they had in that whole game. And he never recovered from that mentally. He still will be over-reliant on his scrambling, and it's still holding him and the team back such that the Bears are moving on now. I would be very worried about repeating history there. I would hope that they learn a lesson from that and try to be a little bit more sound about how they protect him and the supporting cast that they give him. Because if you just toss Caleb Williams out there and don't give him any help at all and just say, all right, go survive, he's going to just become a guy that runs around and you're not going to be able to run a classic offense with him at all. I'm really worried about that. The ceiling is there.
They should trade with Washington and just take one of the top two, honestly, because I
wouldn't hate it. If I were Ryan Poles, my phone would be open.
Yeah. And then Washington can get the DC kid, and that's where I guess is around where he's from, right? And Kingsbury or some coach.
Which one? May?
Yeah, no. Caleb Williams, isn't he?
Is he from DC?
Oh, that's what I heard, and that there was a coach that coached him somewhere. I don't know. I don't know for a fact. That's why I shouldn't say stuff I don't know for a fact off the cuff like that. But anyways, speaking of Jaden Daniels, you described him as a pocket passer that can run.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about that. I love that description. I feel the same way.
I do think that he's similarly his scrambles are a bit of a clutch or of a crutch. Like sometimes he will scramble out at times when he shouldn't. And in the NFL, you're going to get punished really bad for that, especially because Jaden Daniels doesn't slide. So he takes some hits that are pretty gnarly.
To expound on that, one of my guys said that he runs like a deer in traffic, or a fawn in traffic.
Yeah, and he gets hit like a fawn by traffic. Yeah.
Yeah.
That said, I think of all six of these guys, he is the one that to me looks the most pro ready. He looks the most Sunday-ish, and the reads and progressions that he was executing at LSU most closely resemble what he will find in the NFL. Like Caleb Williams, he ain't running the triple option. You don't do that in the NFL. I mean, I think it'd be actually really sick if the Bears just said, screw it, we're being a triple option team. We've never seen a triple option team in the NFL. The Chiefs have some of it as a subversion, but that's not a bread and butter. They're still like a zone and counter team. Jaden Daniels can get to a backside dig. He can throw all over the field and throw accurately. His throwing mechanics are really sound. His feet are really sound. His upper body is exactly the way that it's supposed to look in all of the little, biomechanical ways that I've spent a lot of time researching this offseason. It all looks really ready to go right out the box. And by the way, if things go wrong, he can maybe just house it from 70. And then that's also fine. Like, you're not just getting the boring point guard guy. There's still a lot of explosive potential. And by the way, his best ball, go ball down the sideline.
Yeah.
Have we seen a receiver in purple do that a lot in the last couple of years? Maybe.
I don't know. I'm thinking, and I'm really digging.
It's like,
here,
it's
but
perfect.
I can't seem to find one.
It's right out the bat.
Maybe
right out the
gate. If we did, we'd probably trade him. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. We'll trade him for a second round pick and a backup corner. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think we're in the same page for sure. I just, and you've been doing it longer than I have, and you break down a lot more film than I have. But one of the things that I like about your show, and you were like, I think voted almost unbiased, reporting on Twitter, stuff like that. So everybody thinks that about you. You're very judicious when it comes to looking at film and and saying the positive and saying the negatives, and not just one side of it. So it's good to have you do that. And you said negatives about Jaden Daniels. There's a guy that I think probably has a little more negatives, and that's Drake May. I think do you see like third down efficiency, some issues there? You said all these guys seem to have every once in a while put their head down. Not a good thing for a quarterback. What do you think of Drake May? Is the physical stature, his talents, almost like a Herbert, good enough, to put him in the top 3 of this draft?
I mean, in the top 3, of course, he's probably top 2. A lot of people will do the Josh Allen comparison because he's got that chaos ball thing. And I see it. I think that's a little bit reductive. There's obviously differences, but I get where people are coming from. For me, Drake May, he can hit all the throws. He has that scramble drill thing down. I love the way that he scrambles and runs around and makes plays. Mm-hmm. He's got this catastrophic bozo gene sometimes where he will run around and then just throw the most idiotic interception you've ever seen. So you gotta hope that with experience, he gets a little bit safer with the football and learns how to protect it a little bit more. But for me, the thing that I maybe break on with people, a lot of people love his pocket presence. And I have to ask everybody, what do you mean by pocket presence? And what mostly I think people are talking about is you take the snap, you do your drop back, top of your drop back, you throw, being pocket quarterbacking, and that's all great, right? That's a little bit, that's what you practice all day. It's going to be more rehearsed. It's going to be more polished. But when there is a flash of color, he will drift pretty hard. And he used to just bail like an idiot.
Oh, I've seen
in the beginning
I know what you're talking about.
The season. He would bail like crazy in pockets he did not need to bail out of. If you're a Gophers fan, he actually did a ton in that Gophers game.
Yeah, he's actually moving to the right. He knows he's throwing it to the right, so he starts moving that way.
Yes, and Levis did that too, and I think that's still bugging him. But with May, he has calmed down on that a little bit, and instead of a full bail, it's just a drift. It's just a little bit of I don't like it, and he's just going to kind of drift a little bit. But when he drifts, he doesn't keep his base wide. When you're throwing a pass, think about how your feet are, right? Think about how your legs are. They're shoulder width apart. Their cleats in the ground. They're really stable. When you want to drift a little bit, you should kind of, wait on the balls of your toes, and you should bounce your way over. And if you want a college quarterback that's really good at that, JJ McCarthy's really good at that. He's very polished about that. You can tell they spend a lot of time drilling that. Drake May will just start running one foot in front of the other, losing his base. And then you lose your balance, you lose your torque and all that stuff. You have to throw on the run. He's good at throwing on the run. And in fact, it feels to me that he is more comfortable throwing on the run than he is throwing not on the run. And that makes a lot of sense because when you're a high school quarterback, you're a college quarterback, you can run around, do all these throws on the run, do all this crazy stuff, get away with it all day. That's going to be the habit that you make. But I would want to kind of break that habit and have him be more judicious about when he decides to throw on the run and when he just does a small reset and throws, rather than trying to throw off his heels or weird weight and all this stuff. You're just never going to quite be as accurate, and you're never going to have as much power as you think you have. And just calming down his feet a little bit in the pocket and having him, his base kind of glued down a little bit better, I think will make him a much better quarterback. Now, that to me is pretty fixable. So I actually have Drake May as QB2 and Jaden Daniels as QB1, and then Williams as 3, and it's very close. It's loose ordering. I do more of a tier list thing where they're kind of in the same tier, and I guess I'll loosely order them in the tier, but it's not that serious. But these are clearly the top 3 guys. But whichever guy you get, yeah, there is something you're going to have to deal with. There's nobody that's just this like super complete, perfect prospect. Like, for example, Trevor Lawrence was coming out.
Out of those 3, who do you think has the highest upside, though?
Upside? Clearly it's Caleb, in terms of like, if you fixed every issue this guy had, who is the best quarterback? Caleb would be the best quarterback. But I think that the issues that he has, I'll put it this way, have less certainty to get fixed. That carries risk all the time, and all draft picks carry risk. But I think when we come to the draft, we see ceilings a lot. We're really good at seeing potential. We're really good at measuring combines and spark scores and potential and all that stuff. But how much work do you have to go through to reach that potential? I do think that is a longer list of things for Caleb Williams than it is for either of the other 2 guys.
I actually just had Thor Nystrom on last week, and he brought up the fact that Jaden Daniels started doing like VR training, where he had like defenses and stuff like that, and they started. He struggled with it coming to LSU, and they started doing that, and obviously he just popped off, and this year. But they started putting that 1.5 and 2 times because he's got so good at it. You brought up something of pocket presence, and the first guy I thought about, and as a guy you've talked about before with pocket presence, is Penix. I feel like even though he's not known to run outside the pocket or extend plays or throw on the run, but in the pocket, though, I see him as a guy that maneuvers around the pocket a little bit, stands tall, and delivers the ball. Do you see that, or am I crazy?
No. I see what you're talking about. For him, when there's pressure, he will stand in there, take the hit, and throw off his back foot. Probably try to throw something off platform. Sometimes Kirk has gone through a couple of different like responses to pressure as he's sort of tweaked with and experimented with his game over the years. And like watching that arc has actually been really interesting. But yeah, with Penix, his preferred deal is to sort of fall away from it and throw these fadeaway jumpers, and he can throw some of them, but he can't hit all of them.
I see that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think he'll ever be a runner. I think his legs are already too shot, to be honest with you. He just doesn't have that kind of athleticism. He's not that kind of athlete.
Now the big riser, and you bring this up a lot in some of your writing, and I think it's Hassan kind of teases you about talking about people's feet a lot. So
I did an article on Jaden Daniels that was about footwork, so he made a whole deal. Yeah.
So, but you just talked about JJ McCarthy's feet.
Yep.
He's 20 years old, man. I give him a lot of tiebreakers because of his age, and we just did a mock draft where even though we traded up in the 7th pick above Atlanta as kind of a scenario, and Jaden Daniels was there, but we were expecting to take JJ McCarthy there, but we just took Jaden Daniels. But just say we took JJ McCarthy, you wouldn't. If we stepped up a little bit, drafted him there, not giving up too much draft capital, we got a guy that we think that has a lot of potential. JJ McCarthy's kind of that guy that fits the bill, especially with his age. And I know a lot of Viking fans are starting to warm up to him, and there's a lot of champions out there. Tell me what you think about JJ McCarthy, man.
Yeah, he is wildly controversial, isn't he?
Yeah, I just did a poll, and I said Drake May, JJ McCarthy, or Jaden Daniels, and went 40-40 and 20 JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, so there are people that would take him over both of those guys. I wouldn't do that, but I think there's a big difference with me and most of the people who have like super strong opinions about college quarterbacks are people who watch college football every Saturday and watched a bunch of games of this guy and got their opinion from that. I don't really engage with college football on Saturdays until it is draft time, and then I'm just going to go dive right into the tape. So I don't get that same sort of that same sort of experience, and I'm immediately looking for traits in NFL stuff, and I don't really care about what the run pass ratio of the Michigan Wolverines is. And so for me, I didn't get the experience of frustratedly watching Michigan get away with a whole bunch of stuff and run the ball 6 times in a row. I skip past all those plays. I'm watching what he does when he has the ball, right? I don't care what happens on a run play until I'm watching like Blake Corum or whoever. But so I didn't really fall into any of that. And I think that sort of primed me to be a little bit more focused on what he can do, not on what Michigan didn't ask him to. And for me, Michigan didn't ask a lot of the passing game because the passing game was really, really, really sloppy. Guys messed up all over the place. Guys would run into each other. Protections would get busted. Routes would break off early or late or in the wrong depths. They did a lot of stuff on drops on like everywhere, right? Losing contested catches. To me, when I was watching the passing offense of the Michigan Wolverines, I got the sense that this is a chaotic circus that JJ McCarthy is holding together, that he is the only reason this thing is remotely functional and everybody else is messing up a ton. And a lot of those Michigan players are going to get drafted. And if you look at their draft reports, you're going to see, and you look at what everybody says about them, you're going to see great in the run, struggles in the pass. For all of them, the linemen, the tight end, all of it. Great in the run, struggles in the pass. And you can see those struggles all over the field. So for me, and I'm looking again, I'm trying to separate him from that, right? What does he do? The pocket presence is excellent. I actually think it's the best of any of these guys in terms of his ability and willingness to rescue a pocket and not bail on it. And when he has to bail on it and do the scramble drill, he's great at that too.
He's great at scrambling.
So I love that, right? He doesn't really have a deep ball. That's the issue with him for me.
That's why he has an average arm, and I saw some fluttering, some ducks, a little bit of fluttering. Yeah. He doesn't have a really tight spiral on long balls. I noticed.
Right, and he doesn't get. I think that it's a mechanical issue. I won't spoil it because I did a whole wide left article about it that you can go read. But I do think that it's a mechanical issue that's possibly fixable. But that's the deal, right? That's okay. He can hit these velocity throws. He can hit these short and intermediate throws all day long. But when you need him to do something that like layers and like feathers a ball in over a defender, he just doesn't have that ball. He'll miss it hideously. So what offense can you make of that? It's okay. You can make an offense out of that. That doesn't mean that the guy can't play in the NFL or won't make it or anything like that. I see people saying like they wouldn't draft him. Like that's too much. But that's, if you want the negative, that's the reason I've got him 4th instead of 1st or 2nd or 3rd. It's that.
Would you be, you wouldn't think it would be crazy if we took him at 11 or even traded up a little bit to get above Atlanta?
No, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I think that's my my reaction will be, we take those. All right, you didn't get one of these super exciting top 3 guys. Well, those top 3 guys carry more risk than the super exciting top 3 guys did last year. So I'm not going to cry too many tears over it. And JJ, he'll play. That'll work for me. I can absolutely get behind that. I think if you miss on those top 4 and you're talking about Penix and Bo Nix, then I start to get a little disappointed.
Speaking of Bo Nix, I probably wanted to talk about him before JJ McCarthy and end on that. But yeah, you just recently did some work on him that you haven't posted yet. Give us a little preview of what that would look like.
Yeah, so with Oregon, they did a lot of short game, a lot of bubble screens and RPOs and kind of little freebies. And I don't think necessarily that Bo Nix gets into the NFL and, his offensive coordinator goes, God, I guess we're a bubble screen team. I think he showed a little bit more than that, but everything with
a lot
him,
of slants, I noticed.
A lot of those kind of call them quick game, right? 3-step, 1-step drop and get rid of the ball. Well, part of that is because they had some troubles up front, and part of that is because they had a lot of troubles with their receivers. Kind of not unlike what's going on with JJ McCarthy. Whose fault is it that they don't trust the deep passing game, right? Is it the guy that loses on all the contested catches? I kind of think it's him. But with Nix, everything he does is like good but not flawless. And for him, like I can see, with JJ McCarthy, I see the plays that are like his ball, the roll out to the right. Like I see him being a play action quarterback in a Shanahan McVay
really
scheme, and you can see that path, right? You see with Jaden Daniels. Well, he's a go ball thrower, right? You're getting moon balls. It's going to be like those Seattle offenses a few years ago. I can see it. With Nix, I don't really know what his fastball is, because everything that he does well, there's still like a major concern with it. But there's nothing that's so majorly concerning that I'm like, this guy's not going to work if he doesn't fix this problem. Everything is just kind of medium and fine. And I think you can work with that as long as, in the same way that, a lot of teams will work with quarterbacks that can do this, but not that, or that, but not this. You get like a versatility. You kind of have access to everything, and you just expect to mess up a few times. You can make an offense like that. You can make a living like that. But that's kind of where I'm at with him. And because there isn't that, I mean, even Penix has some beautiful off-platform dots on post routes that are like, how did you drop it in that bucket? But with Nix, the reason I have him sixth of these guys, but I'm not putting him in the third or fourth round. I'm not talking about him the way I talked about, say, Hendon Hooker last year, who I didn't think was like a player that should ever start in the league. But with Nix,
I hate to hear what you think about Joe Milton then, but go on, Nix.
No more Tennessee Volunteers. No more Tennessee Volunteers. All right. Abolish shut down the program. We've had enough. Okay. I haven't watched them at all. But with Nix, it's like, I don't see what your go-to is. I don't see what your bread and butter is with him, but I also don't see the issue that makes it so this guy can't see the field. For me, that's a second round player. Right? You don't trade up for him. You don't spend a lot on him. You took an edge rusher in the first round, and now you're getting your QB, and he fits into that value for me. But I wouldn't be like, ooh, yay, Bo Nix. I would be like, all right, let's see how this kid does. But I've got my worries.
Yeah. Everybody I've talked to seems to think he played 6 years. He's only played 5. So it's like, okay, he's 5 year. Nix is the 6-year dude. So he's 23, and I wouldn't. If we're sitting in the second round, if we screwed up and didn't get our guy in the first round, and we're sitting there at 12, I'm pulling the trigger on Bo Nix. I think there's enough there to give him a shot especially the second round. So I agree that I think we've been on the same page a lot today, and I'm happy to hear that. I'm not too far off, and I think I'm the same way. I don't do anything until after the season. But hey, it was a pleasure having you on, man. Good luck with those nuptials. You got the rest of your life ahead of you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can't wait till there's little bronze walking around. All right.
Careful.
But hey, I appreciate it, man. And that's it. Skol Vikes.